Excuse me, sir. Please sit, please. Be seated.
We are staying for the remarks.
I'd like to call this meeting to order. Your Excellencies, heads of state and government of the BRICS countries who have been meeting in the past 2 days, Your Excellencies, heads of state and government invited for the BRICS Plus initiative, Your Excellencies, heads of state and government invited for the BRICS Africa Outreach Dialogue, Your Excellencies, heads of state and government of the SADC region, executive secretaries of the African Regional Economic Communities, and the chairperson of the African Union, distinguished guests, and ladies and gentlemen, it is indeed my distinct honor and privilege as chairperson of the BRICS Forum 2018 to welcome you and your distinguished delegations to South Africa on the occasion of the 10th BRICS Summit. Thank you for graciously accepting our invitation. We have invited you today as leaders of some of the foremost regional formations of the Global South, representing all corners of the world, including Asia, South America, the Caribbean, Africa, and the Islamic nations. It is vital that all of us in the Global South work together to address our pressing common concerns and needs. Sustained and inclusive growth, which we need to lift our people out of poverty, address inequality, and provide jobs for our people, is our overriding concern and area of focus. It is in pursuit of this objective that we advance the reform of the global financial and political architecture, the promotion of investment, and the pursuit of equal trade. Globally, we face strong headwinds. We see an increasing backlash against globalization, the rise of protectionism, and the shift from multilateralism to unilateral action. In addition, the fourth industrial revolution is introducing disruptive changes in the organization of production, employment, and society. These changes are taking place in the absence of inclusive growth. The BRICS trade ministers recently agreed that global trade rules should facilitate effective participation of all countries in the multilateral trading system, and that development must remain integral to the work of the World Trade Organization. Structural reform of our economies and strong and sustained industrial development are therefore essential. Skills development is critical to address the emerging mismatch between the new skills demanded by an increasingly information-driven global economy and the older skill set of many workers in the developing world. In this regard, we support the establishment of the BRICS Partnership on the Fourth Industrial Revolution, which aims to deepen BRICS cooperation on industrialization, innovation, inclusiveness, and investment. Your Excellencies, the BRICS Africa Dialogue Forum holds special significance for South Africa as it seeks to build a more inclusive partnership between the leaders of BRICS countries and the leaders of African countries and institutions. As we celebrate the centenary as South Africans, and indeed as the world, the birth of Nelson Mandela, we are reminded of the importance of Africa to the family of global nations. Apart from the BRICS framework of cooperation, BRICS countries have worked individually to promote cooperation and development with Africa. The partnership pursued through the BRICS Africa outreach is rooted in a firm belief that the political and economic potential of Africa as a continent is a great priority. It speaks to the promotion of peace and security, advancing industrial capacity and economic integration, and champions a people-centered approach to sustainable development. The principles, historic experiences, and values that underpin BRICS cooperation resonate strongly with Africa's vision for its own development and prosperity. We believe that the implementation of the agreement on the African Continental Free Trade Agreement will create opportunities for the BRICS investment partners to develop infrastructure and many other economic activities on the African continent. So I call upon you, my fellow BRICS and African leaders, and indeed the other leaders from the BRICS plus countries, to work in synergy to tackle pressing challenges facing the world and especially our continent, Africa. It is only by sharing a burden that a task can be made easier and be completed. In conclusion, BRICS looks to building meaningful partnerships with countries and regional formations of the Global South to best address the challenges that face us all. We trust that this meeting, where we will be able to exchange views and ideas, will spur our collaboration to ensure that we drive the agenda towards a better future for our peoples and indeed for humankind as a whole. I thank you all and thank you for being here. Thank you very much. I would now like to invite His Excellency, the Prime Minister of India, Prime Minister Narendra Modi, to deliver his statement. Prime Minister.
Excellencies, President Cyril Ramaphosa, BRICS के मेरे colleagues,
all my colleagues from BRICS,
विश्व भर से यहाँ उपस्थित मेरे सभी आदरणीय साथियों, सबसे पहले तो मैं प्रेसिडेंट रामाफोसा को ब्रिक्स में
congratulate President Ramaphosa for empowering the outreach process in BRICS.
BRICS और अन्य
This dialogue is a good opportunity for BRICS and other emerging economies to exchange ideas on important issues
विचारों के
of
आदान-प्रदान का
development.
एक अच्छा अवसर है। बड़ी संख्या में
The presence of many African nations here is natural and also a matter of great pleasure.
अफ्रीका के साथ भारत के
India's
संबंध
relations with Africa have been historic and deep.
अफ्रीका में
My government has given the highest priority to expanding India's historic efforts for the independence, development, and peace in Africa.
प्राथमिकता दी है। पिछले 4 सालों में
In the last 4 years,
heads of state and government स्तर के
we have had more than 100
आपसी
mutual
यात्राओं और
visits and
मुलाकातों के
meetings
जरिए
at the level of heads of states and various government levels, and these have taken our economic relations and development cooperation to new heights. Today, more than 40 countries have lines of credit in force which are worth more than $11 billion. Every year, 8,000 African students get scholarships in India. And we have an e-network in 48 African countries for telemedicine, and by investment of $54 billion from the private sector, we are carrying out capacity building in Africa based on Africa's needs. Just the day before yesterday, in my address to the Parliament of Uganda, I stated 10 principles of India-Africa partnership. These 10 principles are the guidelines for collaboration, for development, as per the needs of Africa, for cooperation, for peace and security, and for strengthening the hundreds of years old relations between our people. I heartily congratulate all African nations for the important initiative of the African Continent Free Trade Area. I also welcome the various efforts for regional economic integration in Africa. Excellencies, free trade and commerce has, in the last 3 decades, helped hundreds of millions of people to escape from poverty. Taking the benefits of globalization and development to the people is the most important part of this process. And Global South was an equal partner in this effort. After the financial crisis of 2008, the dark clouds of protectionism are hovering over this fundamental aspect of globalization. The most profound effect of this tendency and of the decrease in growth rate has been felt by countries such as ours, who could not benefit from the industrial progress made during the colonial times. Today, we are once again at a historic turn point. Thanks to the digital revolution, new opportunities are emerging for us. And that is the reason why it is necessary that we be completely ready for the changes that will come about due to automation, artificial intelligence, and big data analytics. And this will require investment in digital infrastructure and skilled workforce. And at the same time, inclusive global value chains, workers' mobility, portable security frameworks, and efficient remittance corridors are also our priority. Excellencies, India has been contributing fully along with its partner countries for their development, sharing our development experience in the South-South cooperation and extending all possible support for technical support, training, and capacity building in developing countries has been an important part of our foreign policy. At the same time, as per the requirement and priorities of our partner countries, India has been extending financial assistance to the extent possible in the areas such as infrastructure, power, agriculture, education, health, IT, etc., despite being a developing country itself. In India's own development journey, South-South cooperation has been an essential basis. Sharing our development experiences with other developing countries has always been a priority for India and will continue to remain so. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Prime Minister Modi. It now gives me pleasure to invite His Excellency, President Xi Jinping, to deliver his statement.
Your Excellency President Ramaphosa, dear colleagues, it gives me real pleasure to join you, friends both old and new, at this BRICS Outreach Dialogue. We are gathering here to discuss international development cooperation and South-South cooperation. As the BRICS rotating chair in 2017, China took stock of the successful experience of BRICS cooperation and put forward the BRICS Plus approach, which is about dialogue and cooperation for common development. We hosted the Dialogue of Emerging Market and Developing Countries, which was well received by the international community. This year, under the leadership of South Africa, the BRICS Plus cooperation approach is being applied at a broader scale. China appreciates this. The world today is witnessing major development, transformation, and adjustment. Emerging markets and developing countries face both opportunities and challenges. As we meet, we are seeing escalations in the conflict of geopolitical and economic interests. Protectionism and unilateralism are on the rise. The policy adjustment and internal volatility in some countries have resulted in external spillovers and exacerbated the downward pressure on the global economy. In the face of common challenges, it is all the more important for emerging markets and developing countries to enhance unity and cooperation. In this connection, I would like to propose 4 suggestions. First, we need to expand BRICS Plus cooperation and deepen our mutually beneficial partnerships. Since its beginning, the BRICS mechanism has been closely connected with the developing countries. For most of the countries in BRICS Plus cooperation, we had similar historical experiences, we are in similar stage of development, and we all face the common task of national rejuvenation and development. That is why we are more understanding toward each other and are more willing to extend mutual help. The BRICS Plus cooperation is a platform for us to develop open and inclusive partnerships for mutual benefit in the effort to deepen South-South cooperation. Second, we need to expand BRICS Plus cooperation to explore new drivers for growth. Facing a new round of scientific, technological, and industrial revolution, we must work together to seize the opportunities by pursuing innovation-driven development and speeding up the replacement of growth drivers. Under China's initiative, this BRICS summit has decided to establish a BRICS partnership on new industrial revolution. This partnership is for BRICS countries, but it is also for other emerging markets and developing countries. We must ride the latest trend of development, unlock complementarity, and build up synergy to realize innovation-driven development, which is inclusive and interconnected. Third, we need to expand BRICS Plus cooperation to foster a favorable external environment. Under the current circumstances, we need to uphold multilateral trading system, firmly oppose unilateralism and protectionism. We need to build an open world economy and continue to advance global economic governance reform for greater representation and say of emerging markets and developing countries. When it comes to maintaining financial stability, promoting trade and investment, to protecting intellectual property rights, and promoting innovation-driven development, the making of the institutions and rules must have full participation of emerging markets and developing countries and take into account our interests and demands. Fourth, we need to expand BRICS Plus cooperation to build a new type of international relations. BRICS Plus cooperation is a vivid example of the efforts to build a new type of international relations based on mutual respect, fairness and justice, and win-win cooperation. We need to coordinate positions on major international and regional issues, uphold multilateralism, and make the international order fairer and more equitable. This BRICS summit has sent a clear message about supporting multilateralism. It fully shows the important role of BRICS countries and other developing countries and our strong sense of responsibility. We must work together to implement UN 2030 agenda. North-South cooperation should remain the main channel for international development cooperation, with South-South cooperation playing a supplementary role. Dear colleagues, this BRICS summit once again takes place in Africa. It's another major opportunity for us to fully deepen BRICS partnership with African countries. China and Africa are always good brothers, good friends, and good partners. Thanks to joint efforts, China-Africa comprehensive strategic and cooperative partnership has been thriving, evidenced by the formation of a comprehensive cooperation framework that covers a wide range of areas and benefits hundreds of millions of people. Whatever changes in the international landscape, China will follow the principles of sincerity, real results, affinity, and good faith, and continue to support Africa's development and rejuvenation. I wish to announce here humanitarian food assistance this year worth 1 billion RMB to some African countries to help enhance their food security. This September, China and African countries will celebrate the FOCAC Beijing Summit. I look forward to meeting African friends once again in Beijing in September. Dear colleagues, socialism with Chinese characteristics has entered a new era, but China remains the world's biggest developing country. However stronger China becomes, it is always a member of the developing world. We will stay committed to supporting the development of other developing countries and forging close partnerships with you. Let us work together for greater progress in the common development of emerging markets and developing countries. Thank you.
Thank you, President Xi Jinping. I now have the pleasure of requesting His Excellency President Michel Temer to deliver his statement.
Mr. President Ramaphosa, heads of state and heads of government, it always gives me great pleasure to take part in a dialogue with partners from so many different geographies from all over the world. This meeting bears the hallmark of diversity, diversity of cultures, languages, histories. This is also the same hallmark found in the very identity of BRICS. The track record, the different track records of each of the different countries attending this session enrich the discussions of this summit. For Brazil, it is absolutely timely and opportune that we devote this summit to the question of development in Africa. Brazil is linked to Africa through history, culture, and cultural ties. Not by accident, drawing closer ties with Africa has been a constant priority. A priority translated in the form of concrete actions to draw increasingly closer ties with Africa while promoting development on both sides of the South Atlantic Ocean. This is the second time I come to Africa in the month of July. Last week I was in Cape Verde as part of the 2-year period during which Brazil held the pro-tempore presidency of the Portuguese-speaking communities of countries. Through the Portuguese community of countries, or Portuguese-speaking community of countries, we are united to 6 African countries, in addition to Portugal and East Timor. And we are united not only through the common language, but also in our common determination to share solutions. to common challenges. And sharing solutions is what really inspires our cooperation with African partners. Recently, we assisted in establishing a laboratory in St. Thomas and Prince to ultimately reduce the diagnosis time for tuberculosis in the country. We will soon also open in Johannesburg a new training center run by the Brazilian aircraft manufacturer Embraer. With state-of-the-art equipment, the center will train hundreds and thousands of professionals in Africa every year. It will be an important investment by the Brazilian aircraft manufacturer Embraer to promote professional training in key areas at the very forefront of development, including technology and innovation. More investments and more trade mean more opportunities and better well-being to our peoples. We want to increasingly deepen our economic relations with Africa. In the past few years, we have signed investment agreements with Mozambique, Angola, Malawi, and Ethiopia. Last September, a free trade agreement came into effect between Mercosur and Egypt. However, the potential to be further explored remains huge. Negotiations are underway between Mercosur and Tunisia and Morocco. We also stand ready to further expand our agreement with SACU, the Southern Africa Customs Union. Ladies and gentlemen, BRICS can and should be an ally in the development of Africa. On the financial arena, we have opened right here in Johannesburg the new Development Bank Office for Africa. The results can already be seen with the approval of $200 million to improve the Durban port's infrastructure. On the health arena, we have launched the basis to set up a vaccines research center, also to be headquartered in South Africa. The purpose here is to help reduce dependency on the traditional vaccines manufacturers. Also, ladies and gentlemen, likewise, as regards international peace and security, BRICS countries have a contribution to make to Africa. Accordingly, the proposal put forth by South Africa to establish within BRICS a working group on peacekeeping is most welcome, and the topic at hand is dear to Brazil. Brazil has a long-standing tradition in peace operations. We have cooperated with several different countries in the training of members of the military deployed to operate in peace missions under the aegis of the United Nations. Currently, Brazilian troops are deployed in 5 different missions in Africa. And this is an experience that we remain ready to share. We do indeed wish to ensure that the BRICS agenda for Africa be as vibrant as are our historical and effective linkages between Brazil and Africa. And the same is true, of course, towards Turkey, Egypt, and so many other countries represented in this session today. Brazil looks towards Africa with the determination to undertake projects that will bring us increasingly closer together, evermore. Brazil looks to Africa and to all countries attending this session with the lenses of friendship and with a clear-cut sense of our shared future. Finally, in conclusion, President Ramaphosa, congratulations for organizing this important BRICS summit, but also the BRICS Plus and the BRICS outreach sessions. A brilliant idea you had, Mr. President. Thank you very much.
Thank you, President Temer. And now I'd like to call upon His Excellency, President Vladimir Putin, to make his statement.
Dear colleagues, I would also like to welcome guests of our summit, African leaders and heads of countries presiding over the G20, Organization of Islamic Cooperation, and the Caribbean Community. I would like to extend gratitude to the President of the South African Republic for the organization of such a representative forum. 5 years ago, the leaders of BRICS states met with African countries for the first time. Since then, our 5 BRICS partners and African countries have substantially strengthened and expanded their cooperation in economic, political, and humanitarian fields. Today, Africa is one of the most vibrant regions of the world. According to the UN estimates, by 2050, the population of the continent will account for 2.5 billion people. The level of urbanization is growing. According to estimates, the share of people living in cities will grow up to 60% by 2050. Internal African market and consumer demand are growing. BRICS states and African countries are confronted with similar development challenges. In 2015, the UFA summit saw the adoption of a large-scale BRICS strategy for economic partnership. I believe we should consider ways to engage our African partners to the work in each of these areas which we have decided: economy, finances. Russia has always attached priority attention to the development of relations with African states. These relations are founded on many years of friendship and mutual assistance. Recently, we have had a number of top-level contacts, including with leaders, many of the leaders present here in this hall. Last year, mutual trade between Russia and African states grew by over 25%. The supply of volumes of food products grew by 38%, that of metals by 30%, cars and equipment by 24%. Russian business circles are showing interest in working with African partners in various fields, including agriculture, industry, healthcare, the development of mass communications, geology, and subsoil use. Let me cite just a few examples of cooperation between Russian companies and countries present at this forum. Just yesterday, we discussed with the President of Angola our joint work carried out by Angolan companies and Alrosa company that is developing diamond-filled Katoka, which accounts for 6% of global diamond production. In Burundi, joint venture has been set up to produce light equipment, including for the purposes of export to Eastern Africa. In Senegal, projects are being implemented in the area of agriculture. Poultry processing and fish processing plants are being built. Let me stress that Russia is planning to step up its assistance to the development of national energy sectors of African states. With a number of countries such as Angola, Mozambique, and Gabon, we are implementing promising oil and gas projects. As for the nuclear sector, Russia is a technological leader in this field, thus offering to our African countries the possibility to set up the whole nuclear power sectors on a turnkey basis. The cooperation agreements for the peaceful application of nuclear power have been signed with a number of regions, and the work has reached the practical implementation with some of the countries. All of these projects will be of strategic importance for Africa because, according to various estimates, up to 600 million people at this continent still have no access to electricity. A substantial number of Russian initiatives provide for the localization of production on the territory of Africa, including the construction of spare parts and the construction of assembly facilities. The implementation of such joint projects will contribute to the strengthening of industrial capabilities, support local businesses, create new and well-paid jobs. On the whole, it will increase the living standards of the population and address various social problems of African states. Russia is interested in deepening cooperation with African regional and sub-regional organizations. First of all, with the African Union, with the South African Development Community. In 2017, Russia's assistance to Africa exceeded $1 billion. Russia's contribution into the World Food Programme Fund is growing. Russia is the 5th largest contributor to the UNIDO Development Fund. Substantial resources are contributed to the World Health Organization to counter non-contagious diseases at the African continent. And our work in the area of fighting Ebola virus has turned out to be extremely efficient. Russia has always been training professional labor force for the African continent. Thousands of Africans obtaining education in Russia, and we will continue to step up cooperation in this field. As I conclude, I would like to inform you of the fact that we are working on the idea of holding Russia-Africa Summit with the participation of heads of African states. This summit could be predated by the meetings with relevant notable entrepreneurs, experts, and public figures. I am planning to discuss that with the representatives of African countries. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, President Putin. It is the conclusion of the statements from the BRICS leaders. We will now turn to requesting the leaders from the outreach part of our BRICS summit. And I'd like to make an appeal that as we make our remarks, we should try as much as possible to stick to the time frame that we have set. As a number of leaders have tight times to depart, as they've been here for quite a while, and we would like every one of them to get to hear the views that will be expressed here. And having said that, I would now like to call upon His Excellency, President Paul Kagame, in his capacity as chairperson of the African Union, to present and table his remarks. President Kagame.
Excellency, President Cyril Ramaphosa, our gracious host, Excellencies, BRICS leaders, Excellencies, African heads of state and government, heads of international and regional organizations, it is a pleasure to be back in South Africa, particularly as we celebrate Nelson Mandela's centenary. I would like to thank the leaders of BRICS countries for the invitation to participate in this important BRICS outreach dialogue. Allow me to offer a few thoughts on why this partnership is important. First, we have a common interest in an open and fair international system. Second, strengthening cooperation with the BRICS contributes to medium and long-term human security and wider benefits, especially employment for Africa's young population. We want to collaborate on key sectors, including industrialization, infrastructure, as well as peace and security, which are at the heart of the African Union's Agenda 2063. Continued investment provide unlimited opportunities to realize our common aspirations. Indeed, industrialization makes more sense when we factor in new technologies, and for Africa, the challenge is to ensure that the current momentum is not lost to us, but rather maintained or even increased. Third, the newly launched African Continental Free Trade Area is set to change in positive and far-reaching ways how Africa does business with itself and the rest of the world. We are working on a more unified and effective African Union that will enhance our continent's governance and cooperation with partners around the world. In conclusion, there is clearly convergence of interests between Africa and BRICS members. What is most needed is a mechanism for effective delivery on agreed areas. Working together, we will continue to be a principal source of economic dynamism in the years to come. I wish to assure you of Africa's commitment to increased dialogue and active engagement. Thank you once again for the invitation, and we look forward to today's discussions.
Thank you.
Спасибо, президент Кагаме. Сейчас мы переходим к БРИКС плюс лидерам. Имею честь предоставить слово президенту Ресепу Таyyipу Эрдогану как председателю Организации исламского сотрудничества. Президент Эрдоган, прошу вас.
Saygıdeğer selamlıyorum. İslam İşbirliği Teşkilatı dönem başkanı olarak burada bulunmaktan büyük bir memnuniyet duyuyorum.
With you on this occasion. I would like to take this opportunity to thank President Ramaphosa for being such gracious hosts to this BRICS summit here in the Republic of South Africa. And I would like to thank you for your cordial invitation. My participation in this BRICS makeup of the first high-level consultations between Turkey and BRICS. And this summit avails an enormous opportunity to further develop our mutual understanding and mutual collaboration and solidarity. In economy, in trade, in investment, and in development sectors, we believe we can wholeheartedly work with the countries makeup of BRICS, as well as other African nations. With the new Development Bank of BRICS and the Business Council, we can establish closer ties with the business institutions of Turkey. Our Treasury Ministry and the Development Bank of BRICS are currently negotiating for eventual membership, hoping that those negotiations will be concluded as soon as possible for a much fairer, much more impartial credit ratings scheme. For the establishment of such a ratings institution, we need to work together within the framework of BRICS and within Turkey. In terms of energy, we have outstanding collaboration with the BRICS nations, and we would like to further sustain that array of collaboration. As the term president of the OIC, I had been invited to attend, but I'm not only representing Turkey, but also representing the Islamic countries making up the OIC. I attach great significance to the further profoundment of the relations between BRICS and the OIC member states. For a much more fair world order, South-to-South collaboration will be of instrumental nature. The OIC Development Bank and the new Development Bank of BRICS can get together in order to support the developmental endeavors of the African nations, and the possibilities that avail themselves need to be benefited from. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, the world is going through a very difficult time. In the recent years, we have been suffering from emergence of wars, terrorist attacks, financial crises, and natural disasters, having great repercussions on the entire human race. We are witnessing a turn of tide in an unprecedented fashion. The existing global order guarantees the interests of a very happy minority, unsatisfying the rest of the crowds. Financial crises are being repeated almost every decade, and this is where we stand today. This structure, this world order needs to be reformed, taking into consideration the new circumstances of this day and age, or else we shall never be able to continue. The changing circumstances will have to be reflected upon the economic and financial systems of the global players, and I'm closely monitoring the role that BRICS is willing to play in the future of Turkey. Turkey attaches great significance to development aid, which is a fundamental element of South-to-South collaboration. Last year, a total of $8.4 billion worth of development aid was provided by the Republic of Turkey, making us rank amongst top 5 nations on a global scale. In every category, compared to our GDP, Turkey is one of the top 5 countries providing the highest amount of humanitarian aid. to those in need. We are currently housing more than 4 million refugees, 3.5 million of which are coming from Syria. Many of the developed Western countries are condemning the refugees to barbed wires and to refugee camps. However, Turkey has spent more than $32 billion for the welfare of the refugees that we currently host. We were the term presidents of the G20 back in the year 2015, and we had placed the topic of development at the core of the agenda of G20. And we had also inaugurated the Technology Bank to serve the least developed countries in the year 2015. And Africa happens to be at the core of our agenda. The Turkish investments in Africa in direct terms reached and exceeded a total of $6 billion. And on this occasion, I would like to refer to the endeavors undertaken by the Turkish government in Somalia, and it is a significant confirmation as to how important our relations with Africa are. And I would like to thank you for your invitation. I'm very happy, and I find myself to be privileged to address such an august group of representatives. Thank you.
Thank you, President Erdogan. It is now my pleasure to ask His Excellency, President Mauricio Macri.
Thank you, President Ramaphosa, for inviting me to participate in this initiative. It's a big pleasure to be part in this meeting and to have the opportunity to strengthen the dialogue with the BRICS group and the Global South. As you all know, our country is going through a period of profound changes. The Argentine people decided to move forward on a new path, to face problems and seek to solve them instead of hiding them. Some weeks ago, due to external volatility and some domestic factors, we had to deal with the stormy conditions. But we have the tools to overcome it and stay the course. We are convinced that we are making the right efforts. The key to moving forward our ambitious agenda has been and will continue to be consensus. It is with this same spirit we are chairing the G20. We strongly believe we are on the right track. Days ago, at the G20 Finance Minister meeting, we endorsed an extensive policy menu on the future of work and renewed our commitment to promote infrastructure as an asset class. The spirit of consensus prevailed. That's what we want for the G20, a coordination space to look for common ground and to build on shared concerns and common interests. We are taking the presidency forward with a vision from the South, aiming to transmit the voice not only of one country, but a whole region. Latin America and the Caribbean have so much to offer to the world order. Through the talent of the people, its rich endowment of natural resources, and as a zone of peace and cooperation. We want to show our vision in the 21st century can act as a bridge in diversity. We are looking for the G20 to put the needs of the people in the foreground, with a strong emphasis on fairness and sustainability. G20 members have widely supported the priorities of our presidency, discussing issues at length, with a focus on concrete and actionable deliverables for the leaders to consider at the summit in Buenos Aires next November. The Global South is represented in the G20 by many countries sitting in this table. If we're going to face our common challenges in a collective manner, everyone needs to do their part. We all have a great responsibility. The escalation of unilateral measures and retaliation of potential systemic impact on growth and put pressure on the effectiveness of multilateralism. We must be able to seek consensus that accommodates differences and enhances common interests. It is time to strengthen global governance with dialogue but with respect, with principles but with practical solutions. Multilateralism is not, nor should be, a ritual of photos for the press. It is an insurance against the discretion of power and a commitment to the global coexistence to which we are destined. It is time to think of alternative ways to complement our work. It is time to think about new areas of cooperation. We celebrate the new topics that the Presidency of South Africa has proposed, such as tourism, gender, and peace operations. And we offer willingness of Argentina to collaborate on those topics that we can contribute and listen in those that we can learn. Our citizens place their hope in all of us. They hope that we will lead them to the opportunities that will allow them to improve their quality of life. I am convinced we must act together to eradicate poverty and achieve strong, balanced, and inclusive growth. It is time to show that global cooperation can lead us to a better future and that the Global South can engage as a constructive actor in building consensus for fair and sustainable development.
Much, President Macri. It's now my pleasure to ask His Excellency the Prime Minister, Andrew Holness, in his capacity as Chair of CARICOM from the Caribbean.
Excellency, allow me to express my appreciation to President Ramaphosa for his invitation to participate in this outreach initiative and for the excellent arrangements made for us. Colleagues, there are no forces with greater capacity to transform the lives of millions from poverty to prosperity than the forces of inclusive and sustainable economic growth. Jamaica and the Caribbean have, however, like many countries of the Global South, struggled with low levels of economic growth, made worse by the ravaging effects of climate change on our islands. All but one member of CARICOM have been classified as middle-income countries. This superficial classification is based only on our GDP and fails to take account of our high levels of indebtedness, fiscal deficits, and our environmental and social vulnerabilities, which in many ways constrain our options in pursuit of growth. There are some of the issues that occupy the attention of the 15 small states that comprise the CARICOM community. We recognize that some of these same issues plague our countries of the South, hindering the pace at which our people can attain prosperity. Jamaica and other Caribbean countries have made substantial progress in implementing painful but necessary structural reforms which have delivered macroeconomic stability and now have us poised for growth. As we seek to collectively address the question of how to ultimately deliver prosperity to our peoples, it is clear that the national efforts need to be buttressed by bilateral and multilateral partnerships. I therefore regard our meeting today as an excellent opportunity for meaningful engagement. There is no doubt that we must confront the common challenges on multiple fronts. First, we must enhance productivity. In Jamaica, we're using our limited resources more efficiently. We're seeking to improve the capacity of small farmers to move up the value chain. We're supporting MSMEs to ensure they can participate in the formal economy through access to credit and institutional support. Importantly, we are building out our ICT infrastructure and embracing and integrating technology for smarter and more efficient public administration. Secondly, we must engage in trade. For small economies, it is an essential path to growth and development. However, even as we are working domestically to support increased trade and investment, we, like many of you, note developments in the international trade with great concern. Because of our size, small economies absolutely require a rules-based multilateral trading system to ensure transparency and predictability. We therefore welcome the strong support for the WTO given yesterday by BRICS leaders, together with support of a world economy which ultimately supports sustainability, development, and prosperity for all countries. Thirdly, we must address climate change issues. As small island developing states, CARICOM members are extremely vulnerable to the impact of natural disasters and severe weather events. It is essential, therefore, that we reduce the exposure of our economies to the vagaries of climate change. For all of us, moving towards a sustainable future requires a determination to build resilience in the way we plan and build our infrastructure. We join and reiterate the BRICS call for all countries to fully implement the Paris Agreement and for developed countries to provide financial, technological, and capacity building support to developing countries in this regard. Fourthly, our people deserve social protection, inclusion, and empowerment. As leaders, we have a responsibility to protect and empower the most vulnerable, to prevent and reduce the risks of poverty. We must also develop programs to empower our women and address our large and vulnerable youth populations. We must enhance their future productive capacities and their ability to contribute to the development of their respective communities. This is key to inclusive growth. Colleagues, the Caribbean, like many other regions of the South, needs to urgently transition to innovation-based economies, both by pursuing opportunities for technology transfer, as well as investing in the development of our indigenous technologies. This we must do if we are not to be left behind in the fourth industrial revolution. In closing, I wish to underscore that the government of Jamaica and the CARICOM region stand ready to work together with the global community and its international development partners in support of multilateralism to further the cause of sustainable and inclusive economic development and to translate our support into action and prosperity for our peoples. I thank you.
Thank you, Prime Minister Holness. Now it gives me pleasure to ask His Excellency President Yoweri Museveni, in his capacity as the East African Community Chair.
Your Excellency President Ramaphosa, the President of South Africa, all their excellencies who are here today, I am here representing the 6 countries of the East African Community as the chairman for this year. The East African Community is comprised of Kenya, Tanzania, Rwanda, Burundi, South Sudan, and Uganda. Our population is now 168 million people, and our combined GDP by PPP method is now US dollars 440 billion. By 2050, the population of East Africa will be 878 million people. East Africa is of course part of the Continental Free Trade Area, CFTA, which we signed recently in Kigali, which comprises most of the 1.25 billion people of Africa. The East African community has already achieved the common market and the customs union status. This has helped businesses in East Africa to grow. There are quite a number of industries that greatly benefit from this integration of the East African markets, such as cement, steel, milk, grain and cereals, veterinary drugs, just to mention a few of them. It will also benefit automobiles manufactured or assembled in East Africa, the pharmaceuticals, some of the electronic machinery, etc. The BRICS countries could easily find investment opportunities in East Africa in value addition to cereals, fruits, milk products, fish products, forest products, beverages, minerals such as iron ore, copper, nickel, tungsten, cobalt, coltan, etc. These minerals produce steel and copper that are needed in all basic industries and are also alloys to metal products for specialized purposes such as heat resistance. We no longer want to export raw materials for which we get only 10% of the value and also export jobs. The good example in this area is the Chinese company Guangzhou Dongsong Energy Group that has invested US $650 million in Uganda's huge deposits of phosphates and iron ore to produce fertilizers and steel. The whole spectrum of other opportunities exist. The steel and phosphates complexes, which this company is now developing, will save East Africa US $420 million per annum in imports of steel and fertilizers and create 200,000 jobs. There's also a huge market of electronics and other heavy and light engineering products. Moreover, the BRICS countries or their companies could invest in some of the infrastructure elements, such as the building electricity generation units, the modern railways, some of the roads, some health units, and some tourism units. The rate of return on investment for companies in East Africa is always of the magnitude of 11%, compared to 9% in Europe, 8% in Latin America, and 13% in Asia. The rate of return in East Africa will improve with improved infrastructure, which means lower costs of production. On the side of infrastructure, I particularly point out the plan we have for the railway from Kenya through Uganda to Congo, Rwanda, Burundi, South Sudan, and Ethiopia. Tanzania is also developing a standard gauge railway, a rail line from Dar es Salaam to Uganda, Rwanda, Burundi, and through Lake Tanganyika to Congo. Such good infrastructure would enable us to trade more easily with Congo, Sudan, Ethiopia, as well as linking us more easily with the outside world through the ports of Mombasa, Dar es Salaam, Lamu, and Tanga. The economic political integration of East Africa, as enshrined in our treaty, is assisted by the similarities of our peoples in terms of languages and customs, geographical proximity and interdependence, and the historical linkages of our peoples, which the progressive forces in our area have been working hard to enhance. Above all, we are assisted by the heritage of a lingua franca in the form of Swahili, which is easy to learn and is already historically spoken in Tanzania, Kenya, Congo, Uganda, Rwanda, Burundi, northern Mozambique, and even parts of Zambia and the Comoro Islands. The advantages of 1.3 billion Chinese in a land area of 3 million square miles, 1.25 billion Indians, in a land area of 1 million square miles, 150 million Russians in a land area of 5.3 million square miles of land, and 200 million Brazilians in a huge land area are not under one unified political authority, are not lost and have never been lost on the Pan-Africanists in Africa. Africa, although with a land area of 12 million square miles and a population of 1.25 billion people, is divided into 54 states. Therefore, our partners in BRICS should be aware of the sustained integration efforts in Africa that will in the end rationalize the interaction between us and the BRICS powers. Finally, I salute the BRICS countries for starting this forum. 3 of the forum members were our partners in the anti-colonial struggle. These are the Soviet Union, which is Russia now, China, and India. One of the 5, South Africa, was part of the resistance effort itself. Brazil has a huge section of their population being people of African descent. We salute, commend, and encourage the BRICS countries to continue, and when we need to, we coordinate with us. I'm amazed to see that some people who describe themselves as Africans are demonstrating against BRICS. Those Africans seem not to know who their enemy is. If you don't know, ask. Do not kutomera, in my language, bump into issues which you don't understand. The BRICS countries have always been part of our struggles, or they are part of us, like Brazil, or we are actually part of the struggles like South Africa. The BRICS and ourselves have every right to organize ourselves for mutual support. I thank you.
Thank you, President Museveni. I would now like to call upon His Excellency, President Faure Gnassingbé, in his capacity as Chair of ECOWAS.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Cyril Ramaphosa, Président de la République d'Afrique du Sud, Messieurs les chefs d'État et de gouvernement, chefs de délégation, représentants des organisations régionales et sous-régionales, je voudrais, au nom de tous mes pairs de la CEDEAO, je crois pouvoir associer le président Macky Sall qui est à ma gauche, à ces remerciements, remercier.
Mr. President, thank you for the opportunity that you've given us to express ourselves, and thank you for the warm welcome that you have given us as South Africa. Our region is the region that unifies 15 states. Our region would like to thank the BRICS leader for the invitation. We have followed the theme for this year, and we have noticed that the theme corresponds with some of the regions that are in the west of Africa. And these include inclusive growth, and we would like to further grow in that field. Vision 2020 is a vision that is important for us, that fosters prosperity. And we have long-term engagements that we need to accomplish. We've also need to find it important to work on the peace and security issues within our region. We would also like to promote private sector. This program is part of the development programs, and this was adopted by the heads of state in 2016 and is marked as one of the priority projects, and that includes energy, agriculture, and health. The major projects in this development is the infrastructure in 2 phases, and that is the Lagos and Abidjan phase, and the other phase, the second phase, in other countries. And we would like to work on the economy of the region, particularly in Abidjan and as well as in Nigeria. To further make this efficient, the heads of state have worked on the liberation program and exchanges. There are great opportunities to work together with the BRICS countries as our region, especially in construction and infrastructure. These 2 organizations, we are engaging on furthering the opportunities in our partnerships. With the new development bank that was created by BRICS in 2016, we would like to work with the Investment Bank of Development. And these are 2 arms of finance that we can benefit from. And to conclude, I would like to congratulate the BRICS countries for accomplishing this mission within the 10 years in terms of infrastructure. Noting that BRICS can have a good leadership within the global space. Congratulations on having done such a wonderful exchange of countries that benefit all the African countries. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, President Nasimbe. I now call upon President Ali Bongo Ondimba in his capacity as chair of ECAS.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, distinguished heads of states and government, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. President, first of all, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to you for inviting me to take part in this BRICS Africa outreach in my dual capacity as President of the Gabonese Republic and the current chairman of the Economic Community of Central African States. ECAS represents 11 countries. I would also like to congratulate you on the organization of the 10th BRICS Summit, a summit that grows in importance each year as our countries and economies grow in power. Yes, let us say it, part of the future of the world, of our planet, is in our hands. The BRICS and African countries increasingly weigh on the world's GDP and destiny. Our respective demographic growths reflect, our vitality. This is to be welcomed because of our approach to political, economic, social, and environmental issues is sometimes similar, but sometimes different, and always complementary to those of our partners. We ultimately enrich each other. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, the theme chosen for the 10th Summit, BRICS in Africa, Collaboration for Inclusive Growth and Shared Prosperity in the Fourth Industrial Revolution, and the choice to invite all regional economic communities, including ECAS, certainly reflect the will of the BRICS to strengthen their cooperation with our economic communities to face current and future challenges. ECAS, strategically positioned in the Gulf of Guinea, endowed with enormous natural resources, with a market of nearly 160 million consumers, offers real investment prospects. Above all, its potential is enormous and growing. Our population is young, innovative, entrepreneurial. Our energy reserves are very important, not to mention our special role in the global fight against global warming because of our exceptional equatorial rainforest, the second largest rainforest in the world after the Amazon. So the future is ours. That is why the multiplication and strengthening of partnership between BRICS member countries and ECAS member countries is clearly a necessity. Better still, a rapprochement between the BRICS and ECAS goes in the direction of history in which we are today all leading players. An even greater investment by the BRICS on the human, financial, industrial levels would thus strongly contribute to the structural transformation of the ECAS economies in order to adapt them to present requirements and to reinforce their capacity to undertake the fourth industrial revolution. And in doing so, the BRICS would be ideally positioned to derive the greatest benefit from that revolution. Distinguished guests, investing in Africa in general and Central Africa in particular is a real opportunity. Doing so today would be a strategic choice. Resources are here, potential is here, and tomorrow's growth will be here. So let us seize this historic opportunity together. And that is why, at the time of the fourth industrial revolution, the countries of the Central African sub-region are ready to engage in a win-win partnership with the BRICS in a model of inclusive, sustainable, and ambitious South-South cooperation for shared prosperity. I cannot conclude my statement, Mr. President, while in Johannesburg without paying a strong tribute to an icon, not only in Africa but around the world. An icon that means a lot to everyone, and especially to all of us in this room. I'm obviously referring to Nelson Mandela, whose 100th birthday is being celebrated today. The best weapon, Madiba said, is to sit and talk. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, we have been shown the way. Let's sit down and talk for the good of our people, the future of our children. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, President Ondimba. I now have the pleasure of asking His Excellency, President Harry Rajaonarimampianina, in his capacity as Chair of COMESA, to make a statement.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. President. The President of South Africa, and all the excellencies, heads of state, I would like to thank our chairperson, President Ramaphosa, for this invitation that has enabled us to meet as African countries as well as BRICS. Mr. President, I would like to represent our countries, and we would like to address the issue of maritime security as well as the ocean economy within the Indian Ocean. We have challenges within the maritime territories. The sea represents riches and the nature. We have a lot of people that are living, especially doing the fishing. We have major challenges in terms of security, and that is particularly in the preservation of the environment. The sea the sea is used as a means to do illicit flows, and this is actually a major challenge for us and the humanity in general. Overall, the sea is an important resource and the opportunities that come with it. The degradation of the environment is a challenge in the population as well as the seas. This is the reserve of biodiversity that is critical. And this is an important source of revenue for the population. The climate change today is a reality. And we are seriously working at finding solutions through the climate change, the COP conference. And we agree that our region is infested with heat. The maritime issues, we have a problem with the security in the region. Overall, it is the trafficking that is a problem in the region. We would like a free sea that will benefit all the nations. For us, it is important, without ceasing, that we engage in multilateral cooperations so that we can work on defeating the challenges. This summit is giving us the opportunity to engage with other countries, with our islands, and as well as countries, as well as the BRICS countries. In terms of the maritime security and ocean economy is very vast. And it is important for us to look at the economy and the financing of those different aspects within that domain. We need to also work on commercial maritime. However, we want to emphasize that the security is an issue for our region in terms of the fishing industry, infrastructure, as well as the naval. We would like to explore other opportunities that will benefit and also work on fighting the challenges that we have. As I conclude, Mr. President, we are embracing the relations that BRICS has called us to enjoy together as countries. We would like to also respect all the choices and all the decisions that have been taken by the heads of state, and also respect the sovereignty of all the heads of state. Thank you very much.
Thank you, President Rajoelinarimampianina. We now would like to call upon His Excellency President Macky Sall in his capacity as Chair of the NEPAD Heads of State and Government Implementation Committee of the African Union. President Macky Sall.
Thank you very much, President Ramaphosa. Excellence, Monsieur le Président Cyril Ramaphosa, Président d'Afrique du Sud. Excellent.
Thank you for the opportunity that you have given us. And thank you to all the countries that are presented here. I would like to thank President Ramaphosa for this warm invitation and the warm welcome that we have received. We would like to acknowledge the fact that we are on the centenary celebrations of Nelson Mandela for a free South Africa, Mandela who fought for a free South Africa that was liberated. The justice that Mandela fought for needs to be followed by BRICS and the entire world. We are looking for a world that is equitable and more inclusive. We are looking for an Africa that will be constructed by itself. And we are looking for good partnerships of mutual benefit. The Africa Outreach has invited us to engage on how we can cooperate for inclusive growth and inclusive partnerships. Africa is looking for a partnership that will be equal, of mutual benefit. We would like to have a mutual benefit partnership. We also would like to engage with multilateral organizations of in the international fora. We cannot be governed by old rules. I would like to raise two issues. We would like to engage on BRICS, as well as Turkey, as well as the Pole African countries. BRICS is these BRICS countries are benefiting the countries in Africa. We would like to develop our human resources that will enable us to work together as BRICS and Africa and have economic exchanges that will enhance global governance. We need practical collaboration in the infrastructure sector, agriculture, energy, as well as the formation of human resources, finances, and investments, etc. Africa has a say in the NEPAD. With the development program in Africa, the PIDAL is important, and that sector focuses on the infrastructure. We're working on the basics, for example, roads, electric parks, and digital infrastructure. These have to be facilitated by two reasons. South Africa needs to be the coordinator of the African countries as a member of BRICS. And we need to benefit on this partnership, and thus I would like to raise the issue of help, financial aid. Financial aid will help us in the strategic developments so that we can have mutual partnerships. And this facilitates investments and exchanges and have access to credit for the advancement of the project. And this should bring us opportunities of mutual benefit for buyers and beneficiaries. I would like to thank all the members of BRICS for the warmth and the good cooperation that we have had in some countries in Africa, for example, the Senegal and Rwanda, and the great results that we have seen in South Africa. And I would like to thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Excellency President Macky Sall. I now want to call His Excellency President Hage Geingob of Namibia in his capacity as incoming chair of SADC.
Thank you. Your Excellencies, heads of state and government, honorable ministers, ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor to have been invited to the 10th BRICS Summit here in Johannesburg under the theme, BRICS in Africa, Collaboration for Inclusive Growth and Shared Prosperity in the Fourth Industrial Revolution. We thank His Excellency Cyril Ramaphosa, President of the Republic of South Africa, for extending an invitation to African leaders to be part of this important summit. This noble gesture is in line with the continent's Agenda 2063 that envisages a strong industrialized Africa that will be on equal footing with other regions of the world. We also thank President Ramaphosa and the people of South Africa for the warm hospitality extended to us since our arrival in Johannesburg. We equally appreciate the warm welcome accorded to us by all BRICS member states at this BRICS Africa Outreach Dialogue. The new areas proposed by South Africa on peacekeeping, collaboration in vaccine research, improved gender representation, and inclusive growth models within the context of the Fourth Industrial Revolution are timely and relevant. The new realities of the Fourth Industrial Revolution that is characterized by artificial intelligence, robotics, and alternative means of production is something that we should pay particular attention to. In this new stage of evolution of humanity, labor as we know it today will not be the same. Developing nations, and Africa in particular, will be challenged due to young and bulging populations. The only way to overcome this challenge will be through continuous capacity building, exchange of ideas, retraining and retooling of our young people. Africa counts on the support of BRICS in this regard. Brazil, Russia, India, China stood by Africa during our liberation struggle. It is therefore heartwarming that, without exception, I will say, including South Africa, all BRICS members have in various ways declared their strong support towards Africa's economic emancipation. Just 2 days ago, Prime Minister Modi, in his address to Ugandan Parliament, renewed India's commitment towards Africa in terms of their 10 guiding principles. Africa will be always at the heart of India's priorities. The People's Republic of China has equally prioritized Africa under FOCAT arrangement that will convene again in China during the first week of September. The Russia, known as Soviet Union at that time, has always been on our side, those of us who were struggling for our liberation. Brazil supported us too equally. It is good to know that Africa has strong, trusted, and reliable partners in the context. Strategic frameworks for development of Africa, in particular Agenda 2063, and its 10-year implementation would receive priority from BRICS. The invitation to the BRICS Summit offers Africa opportunity to contribute to the decision-making process and reap the benefits from the economic cooperation from BRICS. African countries are cognizant of the importance of trade and investment as conduit to economic growth, poverty eradication, and development. As such, we are moving ahead in great strides to create an enabling trading environment on the continent. With investors on board, we seek to accelerate the implementation of continental initiatives for growth and sustainable development. As Namibia assumes the chairmanship of SADC next month, we are determined to continue building on the wonderful job of the current chair, South Africa, and move SADC towards regional and continental economic integration. In our endeavors to move forward, we need cooperation partners to support Africa. It is my hope that the productive and fruitful deliberations we are having during this dialogue will be implemented for the benefit of Africa. I was just trying to add, my time is up, but new bank has been established, and I hope this bank is not similar as the banks we know, who put a lot of conditionalities. So I hope our bank, your bank, will be different. Thank you very much.
Thank you, President Gengop. I now call upon His Excellency, President João Lourenço of Angola, in his capacity as the SADC Organ Chair.
Your Excellency, President Ramaphosa, President of South Africa, or hosting country, Your Excellency, Chiefs of State, Chiefs of Government from Brazil, Russia, China, and the Prime Minister of India. Your Excellency, Chiefs of State and Government, all guests, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to thank you very much for the invitation to participate and have a word with you at this 10th BRICS Summit, comprised of different countries in the African continent, representing about a fourth of the whole world's geographical land, 43% of the world's population, and 1/5 of the GDP of the world. Just these figures would be enough to reveal the reason for us being and the importance of this organization. But I should also highlight its dynamic of economic growth and the efforts of the members in the resolution of the most serious threats currently. The BRICS have shown to its fullest their strength and vitality, trying to revitalize global growth and guarantee of macroeconomic stability when creating mechanisms and measures for the promotion of investments in infrastructure and sustainable development. Another revealing trace is the concern of those in charge of defining strategies for the reform of the institutions of governance and economic growth. I think we need to have more intervention from developing countries in the Bretton Woods institutions, thus thrusting the reform of the United Nations Security Council. The BRICS have them become a voice or a spokes entity of developing nations in the world, having to do with the perspective of its outreach to some of these countries, including the African continent countries. Several heads of states from Africa have been invited to these summits and these meetings, reinforcing dialogue and mutual cooperation, which is a win-win situation, concretely related to the policy of industrialization, cooperation, and sustainable development of Africa. Excellencies, in this summit, we are here as guests. I'm not only the president of Angola, but I'm also the acting president of the cooperation organ president of SADC, as a major role of having peacekeeping, peacemaking, political stability, and strengthening of democracy and good governance. Some African countries are still under tension and conflict, but they have been able to implement enough measures towards their improvement and conflict resolution through serious reforms and actual elections, which have to do with the principles and norms which are part of the SADC elections principles. In Angola, we recently launched a new political cycle, and the government is willing to deepening the democracy and to implement macroeconomic stability processes towards the reduction of the effects of inflation,
and to be able to improve the exchange markets, to improve the businesses environment, and also to fight against corruption and impunity. We are very well aware that the sustainable development of the countries in my region is only going to be possible if each one of them, each and every one of them, can create the internal security, stability conditions, which will lead to a full democracy, which can lead to inclusive growth, a fight against hunger, reduction of unemployment rates, enough housing for everyone, improvement of the quality of life of everyone, and also the creation of partnerships for the integration and industrialization of the whole region. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we are well aware that the cooperation amongst the BRICS and Africa may lead to the creation of inclusive societies and global partnerships for the interest of the whole humanity. The BRICS may likewise, through economic and financial institutions that you wish to create, contribute to reinforce the trend for the creation of a world in where decisions are made in a more multilateral manner as possible. Also very fair, I should say. South African presidency has proposed towards peacemaking, gender equality, and economic cooperation as aspects, including new information and communication technologies, revealing the depth of the issues that they want to reach here in this summit. So we need to leverage the economic partnership between Africa and the BRICS, leading to inclusive growth and prosperity with the advance of the fourth industrial revolution, so that we can effectively lead to sustainable development that we all want, economic inclusion, the reform of the state, the good governance, modernization and debureaucratization of public services, as well as the new digital economy and electronic government. For this reason, we want to explore all potentialities in Angola for information and communication technologies in all dimensions possible, so that this can be a catalyst for economic development without forgetting the capacity of harmonizing with neighboring countries of Africa, Central Africa included, and to the rest of the world. Your Excellencies, I have highlighted the major effort of rebuilding Angola, investing a lot in infrastructure, social works, although not enough to surmount or surpass all the difficulties we've had related to basic needs. And I would like to reiterate here the appeal I made. So you help Angola. Please do help the Republic of Angola to overcome its challenges so that we can put Angolan economy at the service of development, of progress, and welfare of all populations in the country. We know that, given the history of your own countries, you've also gone through the stage of economic and social development that my country is now facing, with patriotism, with discipline, betting on education, labor, and a good organization of the society. You were able to have a quantum leap for industrializing your countries, making them what they are today. We believe that in the current situation of a globalized world and with information and communication technologies, our countries will be able to burn stages. In other words, we'll be able to make use of your right doings. You inspire us, you motivate us into working with the ambition of reaching, maybe one day, if we can be just like you are, and we can add more letters to the BRICS acronym. I would like to thank you once again for the invitation that has been made to me to speak here on behalf of Angola, and I wish that...
Let me take this opportunity to express my sincere gratitude to South Africa for the warm hospitality. The place of South Africa in the BRICS has given Africa the confidence that we equal partners with the rest of the world. In our modern geopolitics, transactions in the human race cannot best function when we work in blocks and common fronts. This is the case because the global human community become closely bonded and interdependent with modern technologies. The human society has come to a point where function better by cooperating rather than competing. We cannot take away competition from human nature, but competition within cooperation is as possible as our unity in diversity. We need economic blocs such as BRICS because economies work better as integrated systems. Humans are interdependent by nature, and in any system, every component is important. We must celebrate the participation of small countries such as Malawi. We can all contribute because we have something to offer. Africa must celebrate the rise of BRICS as an economic community that promotes South-South and North-South cooperation. We must also commend the promotion of dialogue in this community because dialogue is the tie that binds us all. Our countries are at varying levels of development. We need to be constantly engaged in a constructive dialogue in order to maintain common understanding on the challenges and opportunities that are before us. As a global community, we have agreed on a new path for development. We are agreed to fight poverty. We are agreed to fight for food and nutrition security. We are agreed to create decent jobs. And we are agreed to leave no one behind. We can only achieve a complete of humankind if we set the right economic and political governance structures that work for everyone. We need genuine reforms of the international financial architecture. For once in the history of humanity, let us genuinely support weaker economies to become stronger. We all need strong partners and allies in our economic transactions. A good number of economies that have grown to be giants of the world have to depend on capital from somewhere. The most urgent need is for us to invest in the infrastructure of developing economies. For a long time, we have been investing in consumption and services more than investing in production and infrastructure. This paradigm needs to change. We need to finance infrastructure and energy as some of the prerequisites to development. This is a reason why we must commend BRICS for establishing the new development bank with a clear focus on infrastructure development. We hope this bank will support Malawi's investment program. Malawi is open to investment. We are ready to do business with the rest of the world. As a country, we are pursuing shared economic management in order to improve the economy and create a productive investment environment. 4 years ago, Malawi was a broken economy falling apart. The economy was collapsing. We were almost bankrupt because we had a deficit that almost equaled our annual national budget. Inflation rose as high as 42%. In 3 years, we brought inflation down to the single digit. Today, inflation is at 8.6%. Interest rates were 25%. Today, it is at 16%. Our foreign currency reserves was below 2-month cover, the lowest in Malawi's history. Today, our cover is at 6 months, the highest in the history of our country, and we have a stable currency. Above all, we have taken our GDP economy from 2% to as far as 6%. But this is our story. We have achieved this economic recovery without donor budget support. Therefore, we can manage and improve our economy. What we need are investments and financing infrastructure. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, President Mutharika. It's now my pleasure to ask His Excellency, President Filipe Nyusi of Mozambique.
Your Excellency, President Ramaphosa, President of South Africa, President of the BRICS.
Estado e de governos dos BRICS.
President Temer and President Putin, Prime Minister Modi, President Xi Jinping, Your Excellencies, heads of states and government, invited guests. First of all, I would like, on behalf of the people of Mozambique, and indeed on my own behalf, thank for the kind invitation extended to us by His Excellency Cyril Ramaphosa, President of the Republic of South Africa. For us, it's a great pleasure and pride to be part of this important event of BRICS, which takes place under the theme Collaboration for Inclusive Growth and Shared Prosperity in the Fourth Industrial Revolution, a theme that summarizes in clarity the essence of BRICS as an organization that stands for multilateralism for the growth of the people. We are talking of BRICS plus outreach, Mozambique, and we believe that this applies to other countries from Africa, appreciates the need to deepen cooperation with BRICS for the growth and sustainable development of our economies in a spirit of equity, mutual respect, and fairness. African countries are amongst those who show major prospects of economic growth, and they can become even greater if we work together. The approach of cooperation for development within the BRICS, in addition to giving voice to those who have no voice, it is also accompanied by an agenda of development which is in line with our needs and priorities. It is a priority of Mozambique, the area of infrastructures, agriculture, industrialization, science and technology, and the balance of payments. Our economy, after a slowdown arising from factors which are particularly in 2016 is now showing signs of recovery, and this year we envisaged a growth of 5.3% of our GDP. The reforms we have introduced have enabled this growth and the increasing better management of the economy and public resources. Mozambique is endowed with the potentials that can generate wealth in so many domains, particularly in tourism, agriculture, energy, fisheries, and we have a geostrategic position that allows us to develop logistic infrastructures and for the exploitation of minerals, including oil and gas. We would like to express our availability to cooperate with BRICS member states on the basis of mutual advantages and advantages. I would like to conclude by reiterating our gratitude to the country, to South Africa for inviting us to this forum in a format which is so much personalized. Thank you very much for your attention, and long live the BRICS. Thank you.
Thank you, President of Mozambique. Thank you very much. Now we'll call upon the President of Zambia, His Excellency President Edgar Lungu.
Your Excellency, Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa, President of the Republic of South Africa and Chairperson of the 10th BRICS Summit, Your Excellency Mr. Michel Temer, Your Excellency Mr. Vladimir Putin, Your Excellency Mr. Narendra Modi, Your Excellency Mr. Xi Jinping, may I simply say fellow heads of state and government from various African countries and beyond, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. First and foremost, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to the people and government of the Republic of South Africa for the warm reception. Secondly, I wish to congratulate South Africa as host and chair of the 10th BRICS Summit that has been held under the theme BRICS in Africa, Collaboration for Inclusive Growth and Shared Prosperity in the Fourth Industrial Revolution. I wish to take this opportunity to congratulate the member states on this 10th year or 10th summit of BRICS. This, I must say, is indeed enough testimony of the fortitude and cooperation of the members of this great establishment. As Zambia, we are very pleased to be part of this BRICS Africa Outreach Forum, which is themed working towards the realization of the African aspirations. Your Excellencies, this theme is important for Africa as we enhance our collaboration with the BRICS as partners in development. The key resource for realizing Africa's aspiration are its people, their potential and abundant resources to achieve inclusive growth and sustainable development. Embracing and enhancing innovation as well as skills development for the continent to be more competitive in this globalized world remains critical. Addressing the development bottlenecks such as youth unemployment, inadequate skilled labor, and infrastructure to support a competitive environment and sustainable development for Africa calls for enhanced financing from within the continent and indeed our partners such as the BRICS, and it's for this reason that we are happy to have been invited. Your Excellencies, I wish to emphasize that as we work towards the realization of the African aspiration and at the same time embracing the fourth industrial revolution ideals, it is important to design policies aligned to the new innovations and technological changes. Emphasis should also be placed on wealth creation in our economies for inclusive and equitable distribution. Further, there is this need to protect our people from the effects of change, such as job losses, as industries adopt more sophisticated technology for enhanced efficiencies. This should be very, very critical. As technology advances, we are losing jobs and our people become destitute. We should find a way of balancing this challenge. The challenge, therefore, posed to all of us is to ensure that our economies are prepared to utilize these advancements while mitigating any related challenges that will arise therefrom. More needs to be done in creating more partnerships for skills development, creating sustainable knowledge, sharing platforms, and provision of financial and technical support. I therefore hope that one of the key outcomes of this meeting will be increased support for Africa's economic transformation. Your Excellencies, in conclusion, I wish to affirm my government's commitment to enhance collaboration with BRICS, the member states, and African countries in order to ensure inclusive growth and shared prosperity in the light of the fourth industrial revolution, as well as in other areas of human cooperation. Lastly, I wish to emphasize that as we enter the era of technological revolution, it is imperative that we understand its scale, scope, and complexities, as well as how we will respond. We must work together. The BRICS Africa Outreach Forum is therefore commendable and is greatly appreciated by Zambia. I thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, President Edgar Lunga of Zambia. We'll now call upon His Excellency President Emerson Mnangagwa of Zimbabwe.
Your Excellency, Chairman of the 10th BRICS Summit, President Cyril Ramaphosa. Your Excellencies, the President of the Russian Federation, the President of Brazil, the Prime Minister of India, other heads of state and government, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to express my sincere gratitude for this invitation extended to me to participate in this eminent gathering, particularly during this important juncture in the history of Zimbabwe. We are now at the climax of the campaign period, with only 2 days to go before the much anticipated harmonized general elections, which will be held on the 30th of July. However, I considered it essential to be present in this forum and have this rare and privileged opportunity to exchange views with all of you in such a setting as you usher in the second decade of BRICS cooperation. My country thus recognizes this forum as one where critical strategic matters are deliberated upon, which matters have a bearing on shaping new global, inclusive, sustainable development and mutually beneficial partnerships. The theme adopted for this BRICS Africa Outreach Dialogue, and I quote, BRICS in Africa, working towards the realization of the African aspirations, end of quote, resonates with my country's own aspirations. We are therefore commend this outreach platform. We welcome the numerous possibilities for cooperation it offers to my country. My country is determined to leapfrog our development and growth. We have started on an ambitious but attainable drive to industrialize and modernize all sectors of our economy. Opportunities abound in the infrastructure, mining, agro-processing, light to heavy industrial manufacturing, ICTs, and financial services. All these key economic aspects rank high in our vision to be a middle-income country with a capita income of US $3,500 with decent jobs, broad-based empowerment, free from poverty and corruption by 2030. We further welcome collaboration on multi-country projects which facilitate speedy regional and continental integration. In the same vein, we encourage cooperation at tertiary levels where there is greater beneficiation of our mineral resources for Zimbabwe's overall industrialization. Zimbabwe stands ready to enhance collaboration, inclusive growth, and shared prosperity with all of you. Your Excellencies, we note with satisfaction that the BRICS family are champions of multilateralism, which has in general secured the interests of most developing countries. We urge you to remain steadfast in your faith in and support for a stronger, inclusive, and open multilateral system. If ever we needed one, this is the time. We can be happy that one of the BRICS countries' currency is now counted among the IMF's basket of reserve currencies. Your Excellencies, Zimbabwe recognizes the merit of the BRICS ambition to make the world a better, more uniformly developed and prosperous place for all mankind. As we go back home, we shall carry with us the sense that better days await all of us in a future we are building together in solidarity. Your Excellencies, I mentioned earlier in my remarks, my country goes to the polls in 2 days' time, which are set to deepen our democratic traditions in keeping with the guidelines and standards set by SADC and the African Union. I thank the observer missions, including some from BRICS countries, which have heeded our invitation to join us during this crucial plebiscite. Let me assure you, Your Excellencies, that all measures have been taken and put in place for peaceful, transparent, fair, and credible elections. I thank you.
Thank you, President Mnangagwa, President of Zimbabwe. We'll now call upon President Mokgweetsi Masisi of Botswana.
Your Excellency, President Ramaphosa, President of the Republic of South Africa, our host, BRICS heads of state and government, all heads of state and government here present, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Let me at the outset express my profound gratitude for the invitation to participate in this high-level BRICS outreach dialogue. I have no doubt that our deliberations will foster deeper interactions and build a lasting platform for mutually beneficial partnerships. Allow me also to pay homage to our global icon, Nelson Madiba Rolihlahla Mandela, for his timeless vision of humanity, a vision consistent with Africa's own vision, Vision 2063, the Africa we want. Vision 2063 provides an opportunity for Africa to stimulate growth through value addition and beneficiation of its natural resources, modernization of agriculture, empowerment and full participation of African citizens, thus transforming Africa from commodity-based economies to industrialized nations. In this respect, the theme of the summit, BRICS in Africa, collaboration for inclusive growth and shared prosperity in the fourth industrial revolution, is indeed fitting and very relevant in view of our quest to create inclusive societies and global partnerships that will bring prosperity to the African continent. I am pleased to note that the emerging economies, particularly those of the Global South, are taking the lead in finding contemporary solutions to challenges of the developing world. Looking around the wealth, strength, and wisdom of leadership in this room, I am in awe as I cannot imagine any problem confronting humanity today that we cannot find a solution for or mitigate. This is because as BRICS countries collectively, you have the strong political voice and requisite resources to influence the international order. I must say Botswana stands ready to play her part in contributing to global solutions to the modern-day challenges of inequality, poverty, and high unemployment. The BRICS is already a strong nucleus we can tap into. The case in point is the BRICS economic partnership and initiatives on priority areas such as trade and investment, manufacturing, infrastructure, connectivity, financial integration, science, technology, and innovation, and information and communication technology cooperation. It is our strong conviction that these initiatives are steps in the right direction and will set the continent towards a firm path to sustainable development. Your Excellencies, as you're already aware, peace and security continues to be one of the challenges undermining our development efforts. We all agree that conflicts and instability are seriously reversing and undermining the development gains and prospects of this continent. As African leaders, we have thus committed to being at the forefront of finding African solutions to African problems, to spur us towards an Africa of good governance, democracy, respect for human rights, justice, and the rule of law. In this regard, Your Excellencies, we look to your continued partnership in contributing to global efforts aimed at addressing challenges of international peace and security. These challenges, which know no borders, affect us all and require our concerted efforts to make the world we live in a better place for future generations. In conclusion, Your Excellencies, let me reiterate my optimism for a productive meeting and a result-oriented outcomes of this dialogue to contribute towards making Africa an effective player in global affairs. I thank you.
Thank you, President Mokgweetsi of Botswana. We'll now call upon the Deputy Prime Minister of Lesotho, Honorable Mr. Moyane Moleleki.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I would like, through you, to pay my respects to the BRIC chairman and our gracious host, President Cyril Ramaphosa, to our presidents of BRICS and the Honorable Prime Minister from BRICS, honorable heads of state, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Inclusive growth, shared prosperity. That is what has brought Lesotho to this august meeting. Through it, I see South Africa doing it again, because I see wisdom of inviting virtually all African countries, groupings, to this meeting so that we don't look and watch helplessly from outside, but to participate. I look at my presidents in front of me there, President Putin, President Teme, and President Ramaphosa, and realize that in the last World Cups in football, they were hosts. I also recall that some 350 years ago, there were people who came to South Africa uninvited on their way to President Xi Jinping's and Prime Minister Modi's countries. That was a mistake. In 1812, somebody from France, whose name I don't recall, came to President Putin's country uninvited. That was a mistake. In 1941, somebody from Germany tried to come to President Putin's country uninvited. Obviously, that was another mistake. Today, Africans are perishing in the Mediterranean because they are unwanted guests somewhere. So it is wisdom on your part, Excellency President Ramaphosa, to have invited us Africans from large and small states, large and small economies, from far in Africa and from just around the corner. This is wisdom, because by allowing us to partake and to participate in the noble, inclusive growth and shared prosperity envisaged by BRICS, you are avoiding us from the rest of Africa coming to your country uninvited, unwanted, and undesirable. The secret to all of it is what one would call a dynamic equilibrium of people developing together, growing together, and coming to each other's countries for football matches, and not as economic refugees. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Deputy Prime Minister Manyani Muleleki. I now call on the Honorable Vice Prime Minister of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Mr. Leonard Shi Okitundu.
Mr. President Ramaphosa, President Putin, President Xi Jinping, President Modi, President Teme, Excellencies, heads of delegation and heads of state, thank you for the opportunity to present before the Excellencies as a representative of the Democratic Republic of Congo. Thank you, President Ramaphosa, for uniting the African countries to this occasion. Thank you for the opportunity of affording all the African countries to share a stake in this conference. As we recall that this is the year of Nelson Mandela, this is an important and integral part of our unity and working together, and also have mutual partnerships within the continent. And this is the cooperation that we are fostering with African countries as well as the BRICS countries. This is also after the creation of the Development Bank that will help in enhancing the resources. This will play an eminent role in the field of commerce, and this will reinforce the engagement with our countries in the sector of agriculture. BRICS has become an important aspect in the continent, and that is also for the development of the sectors in the economic spheres. And this will stimulate the economic growth of our countries. We will be able to have inclusive growth, job creation, and as well as inequality that will also be addressed, which is part of the challenges that we are faced with in this continent. This will also impact on the transformation, the structural transformation and also programs that will eradicate poverty. Diop, who is a historian who worked on the issue of electricity. In this effect, I would like to address the issue of the energy that we are working on specific programs like the Kantinga, and we have increased the megawatts. This was decided in public and private partnerships. And has increased in terms of the dollar percentage. This will be the biggest project in the world. After China and Brazil. We would also like to highlight on the protection of the environment and solve the problems, the chronic problems that are facing the continent. The continent, it's important for us to address the climate change issues in Africa and also create cooperations and agreements in the domain of environment. And this is a problem that is facing many African countries. The Central Africa will play an important role in further engaging with other countries to resolve the issue of climate change. We need to find a durable solution to solve these problems. We need to leverage off the relationship that we are developing now with the BRICS countries. And this we need to do and work together in the multilateral fora and also in achieving commercial progress. This is why we think that the promotion of multilateral fora will assist. I'd like to assure you, Mr. President, that we are working on, this is the year of elections for the DRC, and this is what we're going to have elections on the 23rd of December this year. And we are working well towards that day. So we'd like to congratulate the BRICS countries and South Africa on hosting this event. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Vice Prime Minister. I now call upon the Honorable Mr. Sharif Ismail, who is the Special Envoy of the President of Egypt.
Thank you, sir. Excellency President Ramaphosa, President of the Republic of South Africa, heads of states, governments, excellencies, at the outset, I would like to extend our deepest appreciation to His Excellency President Ramaphosa for his country's kind invitation to Egypt to attend the 10th BRICS Summit in its current capacity as the chair of the Group of 77 and China. The BRICS countries, as a grouping of large developing and emerging economies, share many of the fundamentals of the Group of 77. The importance for joint action between these respective groups lies not only in an outward-oriented championing of multilateralism and the desire for a global partnership, but equally in common desire to establish a fair, just, and equitable international economic order. Excellencies, the international financial system remains mired with regulatory shortcoming. Our consistent call for the reform of the international financial system, including its structural and institutional aspects, is urgently needed. Moreover, we need to ensure that this reform is responsive to the needs and concerns of developing countries, including broadening and strengthening their access to the necessary means of implementation and participation in global economic governance. Indeed, the ability of developing countries to successfully implement the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda, including its Sustainable Development Goals, depends on an enabling international environment for development. An international environment that facilitates access to the necessary means of implementation, in particular in the areas of finance, international trade, technology, and capacity building. In this regard, we call once again for a sincere and effective follow-up to the global commitments of all actors, in particular developed countries. We also stress the importance of South-South cooperation as a collective endeavor of developing countries and not as a complement to, rather than a substitute for North-South cooperation. In this regard, I wish to acknowledge and commend the BRICS countries in establishing a development bank that serves to enhance the capacity of developing countries to access means of implementation, particularly in the area of infrastructure development. We also call for a universal, rules-based, open, transparent, predictable, inclusive, non-discriminatory, and equitable multilateral trading system, and emphasize the potential of sincere technology and innovation to achieving sustainable development and poverty eradication. Excellencies, it is appropriate that as we discuss inclusive growth and shared prosperity, we do so while cognizant of the context of the rapid pace of change in issues at the forefront of technology, the so-called industrial revolution. Indeed, while technology advances exponentially, we must ensure that it also creates the necessary condition for leapfrogging development and for bridging the digital divide. We must heed the call to invest much more in infrastructure, interconnectivity, productivity, and basic services as quality health care services and education, while also ensuring all people have access to opportunities. Achieving inclusive growth and sharing prosperity are intrinsically linked to the state of our environment, in line with the efforts to enhance the implementation of the Convention on Biodiversity and the overall commitment to achieving sustainable development. Egypt will host the 14th Conference of Parties to the Convention in this November, where important work will be undertaken with the aim of streamlining biodiversity in the major sector of the economy. Excellencies, allow me in my national capacity to reiterate Egypt's interest in strengthening cooperation with the BRICS in all fields. We look forward to exploring potential opportunities of collaboration at the national level in relation to Egypt's Vision 2030 and in connection with Africa's Development Agenda 2063, especially in light of Egypt's upcoming presidency of the African Union during 2019. I also wish to refer to the first African Trade Fair to be held in Egypt in December 2018, which serves as a new endeavor to promote the interests of the continent while providing a platform for South-South cooperation. One cannot conclude without emphasizing the strong nexus that exists between development and peace and security. To that extent, Egypt as an African country remains committed to supporting efforts related to peacekeeping, peace-building, and reconstruction efforts. Finally, I wish to once again express my appreciation to South Africa for its remarkable efforts to make this event a success. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Ismail. I now call upon our penultimate speaker, the Honorable Minister of Finance and Planning of Tanzania, Mr. Philip Mpango.
Your Excellency, Cyril Ramaphosa, President of the Republic of South Africa and Chair of the BRICS Forum 2018, Your Excellencies, Heads of State and Government of BRICS, Your Excellencies, Heads of State and Government invited to this platform, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Excellencies, it is a great honor and privilege for me to participate in the BRICS Africa Outreach Dialogue on behalf of His Excellency, Dr. John Pombe Joseph Magufuli, President of the United Republic of Tanzania. Excellencies, Tanzania highly commends the BRICS spirit and commitment to engagement and cooperation with non-BRICS countries, particularly in galvanizing support for infrastructure development and industrialization, collaboration for inclusive growth and shared prosperity, promoting tourism, and advancing integration and development of Africa. We in Tanzania see these commitments to be critical and opportune in our development journey towards the Africa we want, as articulated in the Africa Agenda 2063. Excellencies, we all know opportunities for trade and investment are abound in non-BRIC Africa, buttressed by robust growth, ardent pursuit of policy reforms, and a new brand of bold leaders committed to marshalling the continent's resources and talents for the transformation of Africa. And by a happy coincidence, the BRICS Bloc too has a lot to offer to the non-BRICS, especially in terms of advancing or leveraging financing science and technology, and innovation, as well as skills development. And therefore, the BRICS Africa Outreach Platform makes the quest for an optimal equilibrium relatively easy to find. Excellencies, I wish to emphasize three main priority areas of focus for immediate action. One is to begin using the BRICS muscle and influence to leverage financing, particularly for strategic regional infrastructure projects of the kind that President Museveni talked about in the case of the East African region. Excellencies, the second critical area that I would suggest as a priority for our collaboration is transforming African agriculture. And clearly for a country like mine, where agriculture still contributes as much as 28% of GDP, without successful transformation of agriculture, inclusive growth and shared prosperity will remain a dream. And I believe that the Green Revolution experiences of the BRICS definitely have a lot to offer to us in the non-BRICS category. Excellencies, the third priority area for collaboration is direct foreign investment. And finally, our expectations going forward are that Africa will begin to feel and enjoy the presence of the new development bank with the new regional office here in Johannesburg. And we are quite sure that if this institution plays a catalytic role, especially in mobilizing resources to fill Africa's infrastructure gap and transform agriculture, this will be a plus to the BRICS bloc. Finally, we would urge the BRICS bloc to support the industrialization agenda north of the Limpopo. And we from the non-BRICS Africa continue to have high hopes that the BRICS will champion President Mandela's spirit of cooperation within and among nations, working together for common interest, always seeking to build a better world and shared future for humanity. I thank you.
Thank you, Minister Mpango. Our last speaker before we conclude is the Honorable Minister of Local Government of the Seychelles, Ms. Makasi Mondon.
Your Excellency, President of South Africa and Chairperson of BRICS Summit 2018, Your Excellencies, Head of State and Government of BRICS, Excellencies, Heads of State and Governments, ladies and gentlemen. The Seychelles government would like to thank the BRICS family for inviting us to this summit and to the government of the Republic of South Africa for the welcome offered to myself and my delegation. I bring to this summit warm greetings from President Danny Faure, who sadly could not be present for this event in view of prior engagements. Excellencies, Seychelles fully supports the call made by His Excellency the President of Madagascar with regards to the need for us to engage ardently in our blue economy. I thank His Excellency for speaking on behalf of our region and highlighting on our major challenges. One cannot overemphasize the importance that lies in the development of our maritime infrastructure and the securing of our oceans, as we seek mutual win-win cooperation that would translate into socio-economic prosperity for our people. This inclusive growth and shared prosperity can only be achieved as we ensure that no one country is left behind, and as we work together towards the achievement of better lives for our peoples. We acknowledge the existence of a number of challenges with regards to the securing of our oceans and to international maritime crimes and the various barriers to trade when it comes to the movement of goods across our oceans. Illegal activities in our oceans continue to pose enormous challenges and threats for our small nations. Protecting our seas goes beyond our regional efforts and calls for international interventions and assistance. We note, however, the existence of untapped resources that our blue economy represents. It is therefore imperative that we together view areas of collaboration for sustainable development of our blue economy, the field of maritime security, and the establishment of proper maritime infrastructure for our region and continent. Lastly, Excellencies, it is our most fervent wish to witness, as a follow-up of this summit, further growth and continuity. We hope that we will be able to establish a platform which would talk to BRICS outreach as we create together with this family a story of success and posterity. I thank you.
Your Excellencies, our outreach has given us an opportunity not only to meet, but also to have a dialogue. And our engagement today has truly been a fruitful one. I guess it could have been much more fruitful if we had had enough time, where after our inputs we could have exchanged views on a number of issues that have been articulated here. We hope that in the future we will have more time to be able to do exactly that. But suffice it to say that indeed this has been a fruitful engagement, which will continue in a few minutes when we have a networking lunch, where we will also deal with issues that have to do with peace. I thank you for your contributions on behalf of your countries, and particularly on behalf also of your eminent international regional groupings and the organizations that you represent. Much of what has been expressed by many of us here is very much in concert with what we as the BRICS countries believe should underpin our approach to fostering inclusive growth and also in terms of seeking cooperation. And we believe that this should be based on seeking win-win solutions as well as solidarity amongst all of us, particularly in countries in the global south. We are pleased that the Johannesburg Declaration, which was agreed to by the BRICS countries, very much in many ways articulates the sentiments that have also been expressed by all of us who have spoken here. As BRICS countries, we are pleased that the intentions that we envisaged years ago when BRICS was formed, notably around fostering meaningful collaboration with emerging markets and developing countries, are still relevant, and that we should continue working towards their realization. The responsibility now lies with us to make the best use of this partnership and the opportunities presented by BRICS to further our country's objectives and the objectives of the regions that many of you also represent here. In an increasingly globalized world, emerging economies and developing countries are becoming less peripheral players and emerging as drivers of change and dialogue on critical and global matters. South Africa has always ensured that we place our continent and the African agenda as contained in Agenda 2063 and NEPAD on the BRICS agenda.
When we first chaired BRICS and hosted the inaugural BRICS Africa outreach in 2013, we did so with the endorsement of African leaders, encouraging us as a new member of this formation to forge a meaningful relationship between BRICS and the continent. And I trust that our commitment to this mandate has been evident over the years and has certainly been represented in today's outreach dialogue. In conclusion, we trust that our collaboration will foster new and stronger networks amongst us in our other international forums, so as to allow us to collectively address the challenges that we confront. President Xi Jinping and I, in an earlier side conversation, said, this gathering is almost like a preparation for the FOCAC summit that is going to take place later in Beijing in September, which President Xi Jinping and I will have the honor of chairing. So in many ways, as we gather here, we will gather again at a later stage, later this year in Beijing, when we will have the pleasure of being hosted by President Xi Jinping. But this has indeed been a very good outreach dialogue, and I, on behalf of South Africa, would like to thank all of you, and on behalf of BRICS as well, for honoring us with your presence here. We thank each one of you from various regions of the world, and indeed from our own continent. We thank you, and we look forward to seeing you once again. Right now, they will tell us the arrangements we've got for the networking lunch. Thank you very much for your contributions.
We allow the head of state, government, and the Minister of Foreign Affairs to take leave. We thereafter invite the 2 delegates from each country who are accredited to attend the networking lunch to use the exit doors on my left. The heads of state only will move from this door where they came in from. Thank you very much.
Attention members of the media, you are requested to go to the media center, level -2. Members of the media, you are